So, you just heard them, and Jonathan Day has popped into the studio. Jonathan, that's you've been playing for a long time, obviously, in various different projects. Talk me through this one.
Most of what I do is solo these days, and so this album, apart from string quartet, is all me.
Is that just because it's easier?
You get what you want.
Yeah.
It's
a
cheaper.
Control freak. Yeah.
And you don't have to annoy people by saying, okay, you know that day-long session we just did, I really don't like anything from those sessions, so let's do it again. So there are lots of
you can annoy yourself like that, though.
Yeah, well, there's a whole other story there of annoying yourself while recording, isn't there? But so this project really came out of there's a lot of stuff going on, globally. Trump, Brexit, we clearly have issues going on. And I have a few times, well, actually many times in my life, found places that I just felt incredibly secure and safe and comfortable, various libraries. And, I went once to Santorini, a couple of times to Santorini, and there's a beautiful old settlement on a mountain there. And I just started thinking about, wouldn't it be amazing if we had like a place that we could go that was just everything great about being human and none of the difficulties.
Does that not exist? Is that a space in the mind, do you think?
I'm kind of torn at the moment between, yes, I think you're right, that probably is true, and also I'm really intrigued by the way that it pops up. So like a piece of street art in a really horrible city you can suddenly feel a sense of like home or comfort or something really great about that, So I don't know whether that exists or not, but it was the kind of conceptual thing of having a library, a place where you could have all of this stuff and you could exist. So obviously a little bit informed by sort of things going on with migrants and refugees, seeing the things happening there. So I definitely had a sense of it being across water. So that led to me kind of piecing together a lot of songs that have been hanging around and seem to fit the project. And
it's
then
a fascinating idea, that idea of refuge.
It is.
Isn't it? And music in itself can be
Absolutely.
refuge to some, particularly you stick the headphones on and shut yourself away.
Completely, I totally agree, and that's some other work I coincidentally I've been looking at with the idea of deep listening, some people call it, and suspect that it's something to do with when we face the day, when we go out to Spa, no, I shouldn't say that, should I? To a shop,
wherever,
or a bar or something like that. Work, we have this kind of persona we wear, like a cloak or armor,
yeah,
and I think in music, when you're really into it, whether you're playing or listening, you kind of don't have to do that. You can kind of be deeper.
And we
yourself.
have many faces, don't we? Depending on where we are and what we're doing. Work.
Absolutely.
If you're a parent, you put a face on. If you're,
Yeah.
And I think good art gets through that, doesn't it?
I think music particularly is a way of getting to that space. I think that's one of the things that makes it so enduring and so universally popular in different forms that people can get to themselves.
Is it important for you to write and play stuff that means something?
Absolutely it is. I mean, that's my interest in music. I can see that music is used for a whole bunch of different things.
Is it communication for you?
It's communication, but for a long time I wasn't that bothered about performing, to be honest.
Okay.
I used to write, record, and then never release them and never perform. And I think I was writing for the landscape, writing for some sense of the transcendent, writing for me to listen to.
Catharsis?
Absolutely. Some sort of way of solidifying ideas and experiences, like the sort of Horcrux idea, if you know that.
Or keeping a diary, I guess, as well. It's
a place to put things.
Yeah.
And then the great thing for me with music is you go to a song, you open that song up, you play it, and all of that is held like a fly in amber. Everything, all of the thoughts and feelings that went into that is held in it.
Having played in a lot of bands, including the Velvet Underground band that we had you in playing
Indeed.
with. This is quite different, it seems. And I described the cover art as a bit like the cover of an Haruki Murakami novel, the Japanese writer, with the black and white. And
I can see
it's quite
that.
atmospheric, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is that important to you?
I always have been deeply influenced by the aesthetics coming from Japan particularly, but the East generally Chinese as well, which is why we have a lot of the instruments we use. Hokusai, when I was a little kid growing up in industrial West Midlands, pools of toxic waste one side and factories the other. Well, the first time I didn't even know it was Hokusai. The first time I saw his picture called the Red Fuji, I used to doodle that on my exercise books. There was the combination of incredible sophistication with absolute simplicity, boiling the whole thing down. And the other great thing with him is he said he didn't do anything good before he was 60.
Yeah.
So that gives us all hope.
Absolutely.
That we're going to eventually get good.
Yeah, eventually being the key word. I think.
One day maybe.
So, given you've got all of these world instruments, when you recruit a band, and these are some quite abstract ideas you've got to transmit
they
to
keep
other
telling
people.
Me this. Yeah, Adam
Yes.
particularly keeps pointing this out.
Adam, what's the strangest instrument you've been introduced to on this odyssey?
A few days ago in the practice, I was asked if I could mimic the sound of Jupiter's gravitational
field.
What was it? Is the gravitational field of
is.
Jupiter?
The gravitational field of Jupiter.
Which is a little bit different to what normally you
what
kind of
sound
get asked.
did you go for?
Well, I'm still working on it, if I'm honest. It's not one we're going to do this evening. But my next door neighbours might be thinking we're kind of going a bit
it is
mad
an
at our
amazing sound, though, I have to say. NASA did what they call sonification
Right.
of electromagnetic waves, and the sound of Jupiter, the core, which is metallic, spinning,
and the size of it, the power,
and that great storm. It's just the most amazing piece of sound, and we've used it on the album as a kind of soundscape.
Where did you find all of these sounds? Is it travelling?
Yeah, I always wanted to do that, and I have spent crazy amounts of time traveling. Like this tour we're currently on, I was, in the last month I've been in Jamaica, Hong Kong, Austria, here, launching the album.
How? Did you book that all yourself?
No, it's through a network that combines music with ideas.
Okay.
So, the one we were at the University of West Indies for the UNESCO launch of the intangible heritage. So, and that was astonishing, because there were lots of great reggae musicians there, people from Bob Marley's band, and lots of producers. And there's a guy called King Jammy who did Black Uhuru and lots of others, and he's doing a remix of the next track we're going to play.
What's it like when you turn up in a place with such an identifiable musical culture and you're bringing something completely different?
That is a question that runs and runs. And the funny thing is, for some reason, wherever I've gone, I've always seemed to end up playing with reggae musicians.
Right.
And it, as you will know from listening to the album, it isn't reggae at all.
No. Although, when we've had reggae musicians on, they're always so keen to have a go at any genre and get involved. It seems to be that sort of culture.
Yeah. I think that it's a lot to do with an absolute declaration of freedom. That's and you look at the history. We don't have to go into that, but you look at the history.
Yeah,
I totally get that.
it is. It's songs of freedom and protest, isn't it?
Absolutely,
By and
is.
large.
And that declaration of freedom and fellowship. So I've ended up playing with reggae musicians in the Sri Lankan mountains, in Indonesia, in Japan, never meaning to.
Yeah.
But in some way, there's always been some sort of connection. And in Jamaica, it was astonishing. I mean, King Jammy is a full-on reggae. He used to make dub plates, and he listened to a song that is really not reggae at all, and he said, right, I'm going to remix that as a reggae track. So we're still waiting to hear how that's going to be. But
what's it like when you go to a China, for instance, where I guess the musical reference points are very different, even now?
The thing in China is that the Mao Zedong just destroyed culture. The Cultural Revolution just railroaded over, steamrolled over traditional Chinese culture. And in a lot of ways, I think people there are looking to fill that void. So I always got the impression with Chinese audiences that they're, more than anything else, they're just really glad that you're there and doing something.
Right.
And I think that's really inspiring for them. The idea that you can make something, you can do something creative. And they're amazing audiences.
Do you need to get permission? when it's an authoritarian-ish regime like that.
Yes, absolutely. I just was in Hong Kong, and you have to have a work permit, and everything we show and play has to be approved by the censors.
And I say authoritarian-ish because Hong Kong or Shanghai is freer, isn't it? Than
they're merging. Hong Kong is merging into mainland China at a really incredible rate. You know, it's changed just over the last few years.
So do you have to be careful what you say,
I always am
write?
deliberately and purposefully not
Provocative.
No, I'm not. I'm not provocative. I just wouldn't censor myself on the basis of fear of an authoritarian regime. But I'm not. I don't set out to be provocative. You know, I just say what I really think and what I really believe. And actually, for me, it's you wouldn't think it as we're sitting here and I'm going yeah, jabba jabba. But for me, the music should say it.
Yeah.
You know, it should be not just in the lyrics, but in the whole thing. The whole thing should carry it over.
Is it almost harder to get an instant connection if you go to somewhere like, I know you've been to Australia recently, because it's similar?
Again, it you know, there's an old saying that I absolutely believe in, that every gig is about the audience, because otherwise you'd be playing at home. You know, if you're being in front of an audience, then you're playing there for people. And the audiences I've played to in in Australia, they absolutely seem to sync with the music. You know, there isn't any sense of disjunct. But I actually have never, ever encountered that anywhere. I think music really does transcend cultural experience and background. And, you know, you play something that people have never heard, because obviously it's unlike playing cover songs that people might know. I'm playing stuff they pretty certainly will never have heard before. But then there's always that connection, you know, that link, and for me that's incredibly inspiring, to be able to go to people, you don't speak a word of their language, they don't speak yours, and yet somehow a communication happens, you know, and that's it's a lovely thing.
What do you take from each of those trips? Because I guess it's quite hard to kind of assimilate so much in a short-ish space of time. But do you find yourself taking key points from different references?
I mean, two things on that. One is, I think you sort of break yourself with solo traveling, you know, because you throw yourself from everything familiar, all the people you know, into a different time zone.
And you can't hide with the person you're with,
because there's no one with you.
You've got to talk to somebody else.
Yeah. And you're jet lagged, and you don't know where you are, and you know what all the cultural references are. You don't know what the society is, and you know, you kind of meet people on the street, and I think that's a really good thing. And then in a way, you know, this is what you're talking about, all those different faces. You sort of take off your faces for a bit, and then maybe a better one comes later. I think that's a big part of what you get. But then, you know, there's a great drummer in Shrewsbury, so shout out to him if he's listening. Nigel, I can't remember his second name. Do you know? Plays with Ferguson Allen. Nigel something, anyway.
I love that, though. You know him, he plays with Ferguson Allen. That's a great example, isn't it? Of everyone knowing everyone via 2 degrees of separation.
Yeah. He was at a show of mine, and he came up afterwards and he said, you know, like the show, he said, it sounds like music from a different country. I was like, is that a compliment? Is it an insult? I said, oh, which country? And he said, it's not a country I've ever been to, but I'd like to go there. You know, and I thought that's kind of a nice
Which
thing
I guess
for him
is
to say.
Kind of the point, the refuge that is maybe something of your own.
Yeah.
Loads of fascinating ideas. We'll talk more and get more live music after this from UT.